Dr. Sarah Chen's hands moved with precision that came from 20 years of practice, suturing the tiny heart of a 6-year-old boy whose parents sat in the waiting room praying for a miracle. This was her 2,147th pediatric cardiac surgery. She kept count. Each number represented a life saved, a family kept whole, a future made possible. Each number was a reason she missed dinner with her own family, forgot parent-teacher conferences, worked through birthdays and holidays. Each number was worth it, or so she told herself. Vitals stable, the anesthesiologist announced. Heart rhythm normalizing. Sarah allowed herself a small smile behind her surgical mask. Another success. Another child who would grow up, fall in love, have children of their own. Another family who would never know how close they came to losing everything. Good work, everyone, she said to her team as they began closing. Dr. Morrison, you can finish here. I have another surgery scheduled in 2 hours. Her resident looked up, surprised. Dr. Chen, you've been operating for 9 hours. Don't you want to take a break? I'll rest when I'm dead, Sarah said, a line she'd used so often it had become her unofficial motto. There's a 14-year-old girl with a septal defect who's been waiting 3 months for this surgery. Her family drove 12 hours to get here. I'm not going to make them wait any longer. She stripped off her gloves and gown, scrubbed out, and checked her phone for the first time in hours. 7 missed calls from her husband, David. 3 texts from her daughter, Emma. She felt the familiar pang of guilt, quickly suppressed. They understood. They had to understand. This was who she was. This was what she did. She saved lives. She called David back while walking to her office. He answered on the first ring. Sarah, finally, where have you been? Surgery, you know that. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Emma's school concert is tonight, remember? She's been practicing for weeks. She's the violin soloist. Sarah's heart sank. She had forgotten. Again. David, I can't. I have another surgery scheduled for... You have to reschedule, David said, his voice tight with frustration. You promised her, Sarah. You promised you'd be there this time. I can't reschedule a surgery because of a school concert, Sarah said, keeping her voice level even as guilt twisted in her chest. This is a child's life we're talking about. Emma is a child too. Your child. And her life matters just as much as your patient's. That's not fair? No. What's not fair is that our daughter has spent 10 years watching her mother save everyone else's children while barely having time for her. What's not fair is that I gave up my career to raise Emma because you were too busy being a hero to everyone except your own family. Sarah closed her eyes, leaning against the wall of the empty corridor. I know I'm not perfect, David, but what I do matters. These surgeries can't wait. Children die while waiting for surgeons. I can't just... And what about the child who's dying for her mother's attention? David asked quietly. When does Emma get to matter? That's not fair, Sarah repeated, but the words felt hollow. Life's not fair, David said. Emma understands that better than anyone. She's never complained, never made you feel guilty, never demanded anything from you. She just keeps hoping that someday her mother will choose her first. Just once. But I'm starting to think that day will never come. He hung up before Sarah could respond. She stood in the empty corridor, phone in hand, feeling the weight of his words. But then her pager went off. Her next patient was being prepped, and she pushed the guilt aside. She was good at that. She'd had 20 years of practice. What Sarah didn't know was that Emma wasn't just upset about her mother missing another concert. Emma was scared, because for the past 3 months, her heart had been acting up. The congenital defect she'd been born with, supposedly mild, supposedly controlled with medication, had been getting worse. She'd been having chest pains, shortness of breath, episodes of dizziness that she hid from her father because she didn't want to worry him, and she definitely didn't want to tell her mother, who was already so busy saving other children. Emma Chen, at 10 years old, had learned that the best way to get her mother's love was to not need anything, to be easy, to be understanding, to never complain. So even as her heart literally failed her, she stayed quiet, waiting for the concert where she would play her violin solo and maybe, just maybe, make her mother proud enough to notice her. That night, Sarah operated on the 14-year-old with the septal defect. The surgery was complicated, taking 12 hours instead of the projected 8. By the time she finished, it was past midnight. Emma's concert had been over for hours. Sarah sent a text. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. Emergency surgery. I'll make it up to you, I promise." Knowing even as she typed that it was the same empty promise she'd been making for years. Emma, lying in bed, unable to sleep because her chest hurt and her heart felt like it was beating irregularly, read the text and replied with a simple, "It's okay, Mom. I understand." Because that's what she always did. She understood. She forgave. She loved her mother unconditionally, even when that love wasn't equally returned. 3 weeks later, Emma collapsed during gym class. The school called David, who rushed her to the emergency room. By the time Sarah got the message, she'd been in a meeting with hospital administrators discussing the new cardiac wing. Emma had already been admitted, tests had been run, and David was sitting in a consultation room with a pediatric cardiologist who wasn't Sarah. Sarah burst into the room, still in her scrubs. "What happened? Is she okay?" The cardiologist, Dr. Patel, looked up from the charts. "Dr. Chen, I was just explaining to your husband that Emma's condition has deteriorated significantly. The VSD we've been monitoring has worsened, and there's now evidence of pulmonary hypertension. She needs surgery. Soon." Sarah felt the floor tilt beneath her. "How bad?" "Bad enough that I'd want to operate within the next 2 weeks. Maybe sooner if we can get an OR slot." "I'll do it," Sarah said immediately. "I'll operate." Dr. Patel and David both looked at her in surprise. "Sarah," David said slowly, "you can't operate on your own daughter. I'm the best pediatric cardiac surgeon in this hospital. In this state, she deserves the best." "She deserves a mother," David said, "not a surgeon. You can't be both in that operating room." "He's right," Dr. Patel said gently. "It's not advisable, both ethically and emotionally." "I'm an excellent surgeon, Dr. Chen. I trained under Dr. Martinez at Johns Hopkins. Emma will be in good hands." Sarah wanted to argue, but she knew they were right. She couldn't operate on her own daughter. The emotional involvement would compromise her judgment, her steady hands, her ability to make difficult decisions if complications arose. But the thought of someone else holding her daughter's heart, of not being the one to save her, was unbearable. "Fine," she said finally. "But I want to be in that OR. I want to observe." "That's also not advisable." "I'll stay out of the way. I won't interfere. But that's my daughter. I'm not sitting in a waiting room like a civilian." Dr. Patel looked at David, who nodded reluctantly. "Okay," the doctor agreed. "But if at any point I feel your presence is compromising the surgery, you leave. No arguments." Agreed. They scheduled Emma's surgery for 2 weeks out, giving them time to get her stabilized and prepped. Sarah took leave from work, the first time in her entire career, and spent those 2 weeks with her daughter. Really with her. Not distracted by her phone or mentally reviewing surgical techniques, just there. And she discovered that she barely knew her own child. Emma loved drawing, had a sketchbook full of beautiful charcoal portraits. Emma was teaching herself Korean because she wanted to connect with her heritage. Emma had strong opinions about climate change and social justice. Emma wrote poetry. Emma had a best friend named Sophie, who she talked to for hours every night. Emma wanted to be a veterinarian, not a doctor, because doctors save people, but vets save creatures who can't even ask for help. All of this was news to Sarah. 10 years of her daughter's life, and she had missed almost all of it. "Why didn't you tell me your heart was getting worse?" Sarah asked one evening as they sat together, Emma sketching while Sarah pretended to read a medical journal, but was actually just watching her daughter. Emma didn't look up from her drawing. "You were busy. I didn't want to bother you." "Emma, you're never a bother. You're my daughter." "I know," Emma said simply. "But you save kids, Mom. Important kids who would die without you. I'm just one kid who's usually fine. It didn't seem fair to take you away from all those other families just because I needed you." Sarah felt something crack inside her chest. "Oh, sweetheart. You're not just one kid. You're my kid. You should always come first." Emma finally looked up, and there was something ancient and sad in her 10-year-old eyes. But I don't, do I? And that's okay. I understand. What you do is important. You're a hero, Mom. I'm proud of you. I'm sorry, Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry, Emma. I should have been there. For your concerts and your school events and your ordinary days. I should have known about your drawing and your poetry and your dreams. I've been a terrible mother. You're not terrible, Emma said, setting down her sketch pad and coming to sit next to Sarah on the couch. You're just busy. Daddy says you save lives every day. That's more important than school concerts. No, Sarah said, pulling her daughter close. It's not. Nothing is more important than you. I forgot that, but I promise after your surgery, things will be different. I'll be there, Emma. I'll be the mother you deserve. Emma hugged her back, and Sarah felt her daughter's small, too-fast heartbeat against her chest. 2 weeks until surgery, 2 weeks until Dr. Patel would fix Emma's heart, and then they would have a second chance. Sarah would cut back on surgeries, spend more time at home, be present for her daughter's life. She would make it right. She had no idea that she wouldn't get that chance. Because the morning of Emma's scheduled surgery, Sarah got an emergency call. A 7-year-old boy had been in a catastrophic car accident, multiple injuries, but the worst was his heart. Torn valves, perforated ventricle, bleeding that wouldn't stop. He was being life-flighted to their hospital. He needed immediate surgery, or he would die within hours. And Sarah was the only surgeon available with the specific expertise to save him. I can't, Sarah said into the phone. My daughter's surgery is scheduled for this morning. I'm supposed to be there. Dr. Morrison can observe Emma's surgery, her colleague said. Dr. Patel is excellent. But Sarah, this boy, if you don't operate, he'll die. His name is Marcus. He's 7 years old. His mom is 8 months pregnant with his baby sister. He was supposed to start 2nd grade next week. Sarah closed her eyes. A choice. An impossible choice. Her daughter, about to undergo risky heart surgery, needing her mother there for support. Or a dying boy she'd never met, who would leave behind a grieving family, a baby sister who would never know her brother. How long will the surgery take? Sarah asked. 8 to 12 hours, maybe more if there are complications. Emma's surgery was scheduled to take 5 hours. If everything went smoothly, Sarah could observe Emma's operation and still have time to get to Marcus. But if there were delays, if either surgery ran long, I'll do it, Sarah heard herself say. I'll operate on Marcus, but I need to see my daughter first. She found Emma in pre-op, already in a hospital gown, David holding her hand. Emma looked small and scared, but was smiling bravely. Hey, baby, Sarah said, kissing her daughter's forehead. How are you feeling? Scared, Emma admitted. But okay, you'll be there, right? In the operating room? Sarah's throat closed up. Actually, sweetheart, there's been an emergency. Another child needs surgery urgently, and I'm the only one who can do it. But Dr. Morrison will be there observing your surgery, and Daddy will be right here when you wake up. And as soon as I'm done, I'll come straight to you. Okay? Emma's smile faltered. Oh, okay. That's okay, Mom. You have to save the other kid. I'm so sorry. It's okay, Emma repeated, but her voice was small. I understand. David's face was stone. He didn't say anything, but Sarah could see the disappointment, the anger, the resignation. This was it. The final straw. After this, their marriage would probably be over. But what choice did she have? Let a 7-year-old die because her daughter needed emotional support? I love you so much, Sarah said, hugging Emma tightly. You're so brave. I'm so proud of you. And I promise, when you wake up, I'll be there. It was a promise she wouldn't keep. Emma's surgery began at 9 a.m. Marcus arrived via helicopter at 9:30. By the time Sarah had scrubbed in and entered the operating room, Marcus was already crashing. The next 12 hours were the most intense of Sarah's career. His injuries were extensive, the damage to his heart catastrophic. 3 times they lost him. 3 times Sarah brought him back. She worked with a focus and precision that bordered on superhuman, refusing to let this child die. Refusing to accept that sometimes even the best surgeon can't save everyone. What she didn't know was that at the exact same moment she was saving Marcus's life, her own daughter was dying 3 floors below. Emma's surgery had started routinely. Dr. Patel was skilled, the procedure was straightforward. But at hour 3, something went wrong. Emma's heart, already weakened, began to fail. Arrhythmia, then cardiac arrest. Dr. Patel worked frantically to revive her, calling for assistance, deploying every technique in his arsenal. Dr. Morrison, observing from the gallery, ran to get Sarah, but she was unreachable, deep in her own life-or-death battle, focused entirely on saving Marcus. In the waiting room, David received the news that Emma's surgery had complications, that her heart had stopped, that they were doing everything they could. He tried calling Sarah, but she didn't answer, couldn't answer. Was elbow deep in another child's chest cavity, fighting death with every ounce of skill she possessed. At 9:47 p.m., Sarah successfully closed Marcus's chest. Against all odds, the boy would live. His heart would heal. He would grow up, meet his baby sister, start 2nd grade, have a full life. It was a miracle. Everyone in the OR was celebrating, congratulating Sarah on her incredible skill, her persistence, her refusal to give up. Sarah stripped off her gloves, exhausted but satisfied. Another life saved. Number 2,248. Now she could go see Emma, who should be in recovery by now, and her phone had 47 missed calls. The world stopped. Sarah's hands shook as she listened to the voicemails, each one more urgent than the last. Complications, cardiac arrest, come immediately, please come. Where are you? The last voicemail was from David, his voice broken. Sarah, Emma's gone. Our daughter is gone. And you weren't here. You chose. You chose another child over ours. I'll never forgive you. And you'll never forgive yourself. Sarah didn't remember running through the hospital. Didn't remember taking the elevator down 3 floors. Didn't remember pushing through the doors of the pediatric cardiac wing. But suddenly she was there, in the recovery room, and there was Emma. Her daughter, her baby. Small and still under a white sheet, looking like she was sleeping except she would never wake up. David was sitting beside the bed, holding Emma's hand, his face devastated. He looked up when Sarah entered, and the expression in his eyes destroyed her. You're too late, he said simply. She asked for you. At the end, when she knew she was dying, she asked for her mom. And you weren't there. You were saving someone else. Sarah approached the bed on trembling legs. She touched Emma's face, still warm, how could she still be warm? And felt her world end. I'm sorry, she whispered. Emma, I'm so sorry. I thought I had time. I thought you'd be okay. You thought another child mattered more, David said, his voice flat. You made a choice, and now we both have to live with it. That's not fair, Sarah said, but the words were automatic. Because he was right. She had made a choice, and she'd chosen wrong. She'd chosen a stranger's child over her own. She'd chosen her ego, the need to be the hero, to save the unsavable, over being there when Emma needed her most. Life's not fair, David echoed his words from weeks ago. Emma knew that. She never expected fairness. She just wanted her mother. And you couldn't even give her that. He stood up, released Emma's hand gently, and walked to the door. I'll make the funeral arrangements. You do whatever it is you do. Save more children. Rack up more numbers. Be the hero everyone thinks you are. But you'll know the truth. You'll know that when it mattered most, you failed the one patient who loved you unconditionally. He left Sarah alone with her daughter's body, and she collapsed beside the bed, her professional composure finally shattering. She sobbed until she couldn't breathe, until hospital staff had to sedate her, until the world stopped making sense. She had saved 2,148 children, but she had lost the only one who was hers. And that was a failure she would carry for the rest of her life. The funeral was held on a Tuesday morning, a detail Sarah would remember for the rest of her life. Tuesday. The day she usually had 3 surgeries scheduled. The day she would typically arrive at the hospital at 6 a.m. and not leave until midnight. But on this Tuesday, she sat in the front row of a small chapel, staring at a coffin that was far too small, listening to a pastor talk about a girl he'd never met. Emma Chen, Beloved daughter, talented artist, kind soul, gone too soon. The words felt empty, generic. They didn't capture who Emma really was, her quirky sense of humor, her habit of humming while she drew, her dream of saving animals, her infinite patience with her absent mother, her big heart that had literally been too damaged to keep beating. Sarah had been asked if she wanted to speak. She had declined. What could she possibly say? I'm sorry I chose my career over my daughter. I'm sorry I wasn't there when she died. I'm sorry I spent 10 years being the world's best pediatric cardiac surgeon and the world's worst mother. David spoke instead. His eulogy was beautiful and devastating, full of memories Sarah didn't share because she hadn't been there for them. Emma's first day of kindergarten, the time she rescued an injured bird and nursed it back to health, her obsession with Korean dramas, her terrible jokes, her unconditional love for both her parents, even when they didn't deserve it. Emma never complained, David said, his voice breaking. Not about her heart condition, not about her mother's absence, not about anything. She just loved, fully, completely, without reservation, and the world is dimmer without her light. Sarah watched from behind dark sunglasses as Emma's friends from school placed flowers on the casket. As Sophie, Emma's best friend, sobbed and placed a drawing next to the flowers, a portrait of Emma playing violin, rendered in charcoal with heartbreaking skill. Sophie had drawn it, not Emma. Sarah hadn't even known Emma had inspired her friend's art. There was so much she hadn't known. After the funeral, people approached Sarah with condolences that felt like accusations. She was so proud of you, they would say, meaning to be kind but twisting the knife deeper. She always talked about how her mom saved lives. Or worse. At least you were doing important work when it happened. As if saving a stranger's child was more important than being there when your own daughter died. Sarah nodded and thanked them mechanically, her grief so profound it had moved past tears into a numb, hollow space where nothing felt real. She watched David accept condolences with more grace than she had, watched him comfort Emma's friends, watched him be strong when she was shattered. That night, in the house that was too quiet, David finally spoke to her directly for the first time since Emma's death. I'm leaving, he said. I've rented an apartment. I'll move out this weekend. Sarah looked up from the couch where she'd been sitting motionless for hours. David, I can't be here, he continued. Everything in this house reminds me of her, and everything about you reminds me that she died alone, scared, calling for her mother who was too busy being a hero to someone else's kid. That's not fair, Sarah said, the automatic response, but there was no conviction in it. You keep saying that, David said. But Sarah, when is anything going to be fair? When are you going to take responsibility for your choices? I was saving a life, Sarah said, her voice rising. A 7-year-old boy who would have died, and our 7-year-old, 10-year-old did die, while you were saving him. You made a choice. Stop pretending it wasn't a choice. You chose Marcus over Emma. You chose your career over your daughter. You chose being Dr. Sarah Chen, miracle worker, over being Emma's mom. Own it. What was I supposed to do? Sarah shouted, standing up. Let Marcus die? Just abandon a surgery? Leave a child to die on the table because my daughter needed emotional support? Yes, David shouted back. Yes, that's exactly what you should have done. Emma needed you. She was scared and dying and asking for her mother. And you chose a stranger. You chose your ego. I chose to save a life. You chose to lose your daughter. The words hung in the air between them. Sarah felt them land like physical blows, each one true, each one unbearable. Marcus would have died, Sarah said quietly. If I hadn't operated, he would have died. Emma did die, David said. While you were saving him, Emma died. So tell me, Sarah, was it worth it? Was Marcus's life worth more than being there for Emma's last moments? Was your perfect surgery record worth more than holding your daughter's hand as she slipped away? Sarah had no answer. Because the truth was too horrible to speak aloud. She didn't know. She didn't know if she'd made the right choice. She only knew that she'd made the choice that felt right in the moment. The choice that aligned with who she'd trained herself to be for 20 years, A surgeon first, everything else second. And Emma had paid the price for that choice. I loved her, Sarah whispered. I loved Emma so much. But not enough, David said, and the gentleness in his voice was worse than anger. You loved her, but not enough to choose her. Not enough to be there. Not enough to put down your scalpel and be her mother when she needed it most. And that's something I can't forgive. Something I won't forgive. He walked to the door, then paused. The hospital called. They want to give you an award for saving Marcus. Heroic effort under extreme circumstances, they called it. They want to do a press conference. Public recognition of your incredible skill. I don't want an award, Sarah said. Good, because I'll tell you what you really deserve. You deserve to remember every day for the rest of your life that you saved 2,248 children, but you couldn't save the one who loved you most. You deserve to live with that choice. That's your real award. He left, and Sarah was alone in the house where Emma had grown up, surrounded by evidence of the daughter she'd barely known. Emma's drawings on the refrigerator. Her backpack by the door still packed with homework she'd never turn in. Her violin in the living room waiting for a musician who would never play again. Sarah walked into Emma's bedroom, a space she'd rarely entered, always too busy, always too tired, and really looked at it for the first time. The walls were covered with Emma's art. Charcoal portraits, watercolors, sketches. And Sarah realized with a start that many of them were of her. Emma drawing her mother from memory, from photographs, trying to capture a woman who was never home. In one drawing, Sarah was in scrubs, stethoscope around her neck, looking heroic and distant. The caption underneath, in Emma's handwriting, "My mom saves lives." In another, Sarah was smiling, sitting at a dinner table, but the chair across from her was empty. Caption, "When she comes home." And in a third, Emma had drawn herself playing violin on stage, and in the audience, one seat was highlighted, circled in red. Caption, "The seat I save for her." Sarah collapsed on Emma's bed, clutching a pillow that still smelled like her daughter, vanilla shampoo and the faint scent of charcoal from her drawings, and finally, let herself break completely. Not the controlled grief she'd shown at the funeral, but raw, animalistic howling that came from somewhere deep and primal. The grief of a mother who had failed her child in the most fundamental way. She stayed in Emma's room for 3 days, didn't eat, barely slept, just surrounded herself with evidence of the daughter she'd neglected, the child who had loved her despite everything, the girl who had understood too much and asked for too little. On the 4th day, Sarah returned to the hospital. She didn't know what else to do, didn't know how to exist in a world without Emma. At least at the hospital, she could pretend to be the person everyone thought she was, the brilliant surgeon, the hero, the woman who saved lives. Her colleagues greeted her with careful sympathy. "We're so sorry for your loss. Take all the time you need. Emma was so proud of you." That last one, again. As if Emma's pride in her mother's career was supposed to make up for Sarah's absence. As if being proud of someone from a distance was the same as being loved up close. Sarah threw herself into work with a desperation that bordered on manic. She took every surgery offered, worked 18, 20-hour days, volunteered for the most complex, high-risk cases, anything to avoid going home to the empty house, anything to avoid thinking about Emma's last moments, alone and scared, calling for a mother who had chosen to be elsewhere. Her colleagues grew concerned. "Sarah, you need to take time to grieve. You can't work like this indefinitely. Please, take a break." But Sarah couldn't stop, because if she stopped, she would have to think. And if she thought, she would have to face what she'd done. So she operated. Day after day, week after week, saving children who weren't hers, hoping that somehow, if she saved enough of them, it would balance out the one she'd lost. It didn't work. Every child she saved made her think of Emma. Every grateful parent made her think of David's devastated face. Every successful surgery added another number to her count: 2,249, 2,250, 2,251, and each number felt like a betrayal of the one child who should have mattered most. 3 months after Emma's death, Sarah was scheduled to operate on an 8-year-old girl named Lily. Routine valve repair. Simple procedure. Sarah had done it hundreds of times. But when she walked into the pre-op room and saw Lily with her mother, The mother holding her daughter's hand, the mother who had taken time off work to be there, the mother who was present. Something in Sarah broke. "I can't do this," she said abruptly. The surgical team looked at her in confusion. "Dr. Chen?" "I can't. I'm sorry. Get Dr. Morrison. I can't operate today." She walked out, stripped off her scrubs, and left the hospital. She got in her car and drove without direction, ending up at the cemetery where Emma was buried. She sat on the grass in front of the small headstone that read, "Emma Chen, 2014-2024, beloved daughter, forever in our hearts." "I don't know what to do," Sarah said aloud, talking to a daughter who couldn't hear her. "I don't know how to live with this. Everyone keeps telling me it wasn't my fault, that I made an impossible choice, that any surgeon would have done the same. But Emma, I keep thinking about what David said, about how I chose Marcus over you. And he's right. I did choose. And I chose wrong." The wind rustled through the trees. A bird sang somewhere nearby. The world continued, indifferent to Sarah's grief. "You asked for me," Sarah continued, tears streaming down her face. "At the end, you were dying and you asked for your mom and I wasn't there. I was 3 floors away, saving someone else's child, and you died alone. I'll never forgive myself for that. Never." She stayed at the cemetery until it got dark, until a groundskeeper politely asked her to leave, until she had no choice but to return to the real world. But she didn't go home. Instead, she drove to the hospital and found Marcus's room. The boy who had lived because Emma had died, the child she had chosen to save. Marcus was sitting up in bed, coloring with his mother beside him. He looked healthy, happy, alive. The surgery had been successful. His heart was healing beautifully. He would make a full recovery. Sarah stood in the doorway, unseen, watching this child live the life her daughter would never have. And she felt nothing. No satisfaction at having saved him. No pride in her surgical skill. Just a hollow emptiness where her professional fulfillment used to be. Marcus's mother looked up and saw Sarah. Her face lit up with recognition. "Dr. Chen! Oh my God, Dr. Chen!" She stood up, rushed over, and hugged Sarah before she could retreat. "Thank you. Thank you so much. The other doctors said Marcus wouldn't survive the night. They said his injuries were too severe. But you didn't give up. You saved my baby's life. You're a hero. You're our miracle." Sarah stood stiffly in the embrace, unable to return it. "I'm glad he's doing well. He's doing amazing, look at him. 3 months ago, we thought we'd be planning his funeral, and now he's talking about going back to school. It's all because of you." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know how to thank you. You gave us our son back. You gave his little sister a brother. You gave us our family. How do we ever repay something like that?" Sarah looked at Marcus, coloring peacefully, oblivious to the fact that he was alive because another child had died. Not because of anything he'd done, just because Sarah had made a choice. Had decided his life was worth more than being there for her own daughter's death. "You don't owe me anything," Sarah said quietly. "I was just doing my job." "It's more than a job," Marcus's mother insisted. "It's a calling. You're an angel. You save lives. You're the best of us." Sarah extricated herself from the hug as gently as possible. "I need to go. I just wanted to check on Marcus. I'm glad he's well." She left before the woman could say anything else, before she could be thanked again, before she had to confront the horrible truth. Marcus's mother thought Sarah was a hero. The world thought Sarah was a hero. But Sarah knew the truth. She wasn't a hero. She was a woman who had chosen wrong, who had prioritized a stranger over her daughter, who had let her child die alone because she couldn't walk away from a surgery. That night, Sarah sat in her office at the hospital and wrote a letter. Not to David, not to her colleagues, but to Emma. A letter her daughter would never read, but that Sarah needed to write anyway. "Dear Emma, I'm so sorry. I know I said that at your funeral, but I need to say it again. I'm so sorry. I failed you in every way a mother can fail a child. I was absent when you needed presence. I was distant when you needed love. I chose work over you, again and again, until the one time it mattered most, and I chose wrong, and you died. Everyone keeps telling me I shouldn't blame myself. that I made an impossible choice, that any surgeon would have done the same. But Emma, I keep thinking about all the choices I made before that final one. The choice to work late instead of coming to your concerts. The choice to miss your parent-teacher conferences. The choice to let your father raise you while I chased professional success. Those were choices too. And they all led to that final terrible choice where I picked a stranger's child over yours. I saved Marcus. He's alive and healthy and going back to school. His mother calls me a hero. But I'm not a hero, Emma. I'm a coward who couldn't face the possibility of losing a patient, even when it meant losing you. I don't know how to live with this. I don't know how to be Dr. Sarah Chen, miracle worker, when I know the truth. That I couldn't work a miracle for the one person who deserved it most. That I saved 2,248 children, but I couldn't save you. That I chose my ego over your life. I love you. I loved you then, and I love you now, and I will love you every day for the rest of my life. But love wasn't enough, was it? You needed me, and I wasn't there. And I can never make that right. I'm so sorry, baby. I'm so sorry. Mom. Sarah folded the letter and put it in her desk drawer, next to her resignation letter that she'd been writing and rewriting for 3 months, but couldn't quite bring herself to submit. How do you walk away from 20 years of being someone? How do you stop being the person everyone depends on? But how do you continue when you know the cost of being that person? Sarah didn't have answers. She only had grief and guilt and the terrible knowledge that she had made a choice she could never unmake, had lost something she could never get back, had failed in a way that no amount of successful surgeries could ever redeem. She was the doctor who had saved everyone but her own daughter, and that was a truth she would carry for the rest of her life. 6 months after Emma's death, Sarah received a letter. It came to the hospital, addressed to her in careful, childish handwriting. The return address was from Marcus's family. Sarah stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. She knew she should throw it away. She didn't want gratitude from the family whose son lived while her daughter died. She didn't want to be reminded of the choice she'd made, but something compelled her to open it anyway. Inside was a drawing, crayon on construction paper, a stick figure in a white coat with a stethoscope, standing next to a smaller stick figure with a big smile. Above them, in shaky letters, Dr. Chen is my hero. Thank you for saving my life. Love, Marcus. Sarah felt bile rise in her throat. She should feel proud, moved, gratified that the child she'd saved was healthy and grateful. But all she felt was sick. Because every thank you from Marcus was a reminder that Emma would never draw another picture, would never say another word, would never smile or laugh or live because Sarah had chosen this child over hers. She put the drawing in her desk drawer, unable to throw it away but unable to look at it. Beside it was another letter, one she'd received a week ago from the hospital board. A nomination for the Distinguished Service Award. Recognition of her extraordinary dedication and life-saving work. A ceremony scheduled for next month where she would be honored in front of colleagues, press, and the families she'd helped. Sarah hadn't responded, hadn't declined or accepted. Just let the letter sit, a reminder of the disconnect between who the world thought she was and who she knew herself to be. That evening, she drove to David's apartment. She'd been there once before, to sign divorce papers. The apartment was small but neat, decorated with photos of Emma that Sarah couldn't have in her own house because seeing them was too painful. David answered the door looking surprised. Sarah, what are you? I got a letter from Marcus, she said without preamble. A thank you card. He drew a picture calling me his hero. David's expression hardened. Good for Marcus. I can't do this anymore, Sarah said. I can't keep operating, keep saving children, keep being thanked and praised and celebrated when I know what it cost, when I know what I lost. Then quit, David said simply. Walk away. Find something else to do with your life. It's not that simple. Yes, it is, David interrupted. Sarah, you're still trying to balance the scales. Still trying to save enough children to make up for losing Emma. But it doesn't work that way. You could save 10,000 more kids and it wouldn't bring her back. It wouldn't change what you chose. I know that, Sarah said, her voice breaking. Don't you think I know that? Then why are you here? What do you want from me? Absolution? Permission to feel better about yourself? I can't give you that. I don't want absolution, Sarah said. I needed to tell someone that I'm drowning, that every surgery feels like a betrayal of Emma, that every successful operation is another number in my count, and every number reminds me that it should have been Emma, that she should have been my priority, that I chose wrong. David's expression softened slightly, but the anger remained. You did choose wrong, and I'm sorry you're suffering. I really am. But Sarah, Emma suffered too. She spent 10 years loving a mother who was never there. 10 years hoping you'd choose her just once. And when she finally needed you, really, desperately needed you, you still chose someone else. So yes, you're drowning, but Emma drowned first, and you weren't there to save her. The words were brutal, but true. Sarah nodded, accepting them, accepting the pain of them. I know. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just needed you to know that I can't be that person anymore. Dr. Sarah Chen, hero surgeon. She died with Emma. And I don't know who I'm supposed to be now. That's not my problem to solve, David said, but there was less anger in his voice now. I can't help you figure out who you are, Sarah. I can barely figure out who I am without Emma. All I know is that I'm a father who lost his daughter, and I'm angry and I'm broken, and I will never understand how you made the choice you did. But you have to live with it. You have to find a way to exist in a world where Emma is gone, and you were the one who wasn't there when she left. Sarah nodded again. The hospital wants to give me an award for saving Marcus. They want to do a ceremony, invite press, celebrate my heroic dedication. Are you going to accept it? I don't know. Part of me thinks I should, that I should honor the work, the lives saved, the good I've done. But the other part, she trailed off. The other part knows it's a lie, David finished. That you're not a hero. That heroes don't let their own children die while they save strangers. That all those lives you saved don't balance out the one you lost. Yes, Sarah whispered. That part. They stood in silence for a moment. Then David said quietly, For what it's worth, I think you should quit. Not because you deserve to suffer, or because you need to punish yourself, but because you can't heal while you're still in that hospital, still operating, still being Dr. Sarah Chen. You need to be someone else now, someone who can live with what happened, and you can't do that while you're surrounded by reminders of your choice. What would I even do? Sarah asked. I've been a surgeon for 20 years. It's all I know. It's all I am. No, David said. It's all you chose to be. You chose to be a surgeon instead of a present mother. You chose career over family. You chose wrong. But Sarah, you can choose differently now. You can choose to be someone who prioritizes differently, who values differently, who lives differently. Emma's gone. You can't save her, but you can honor her by becoming the kind of person she deserved to have as a mother. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face. I don't know if I can. Neither do I, David said honestly. But I know you can't keep doing what you're doing. You can't save your way out of grief. You can't operate away your guilt. You have to face it, sit with it, let it change you, and maybe, eventually, you'll find a way to live with what you've done. Sarah left David's apartment with no answers, but with a strange sense of clarity. He was right. She couldn't keep being Dr. Sarah Chen. That version of herself had died with Emma. She needed to become someone else, someone who could live with the choice she'd made and the consequences of that choice. The next day, Sarah submitted her resignation to the hospital, effective immediately. No award ceremony, no farewell speeches, just a quiet exit from the career that had defined her for 2 decades. Her colleagues were shocked. You can't just leave. Think about all the patients who need you. You're the best surgeon we have. What about your work? But Sarah was firm. I need to step away, for my health, for my sanity, for reasons I can't fully explain but that I hope you'll respect. The hospital board tried to convince her to take a leave of absence instead. Just take 6 months off, a year if you need it, but don't throw away your career. Don't waste your gift. Sarah almost laughed. Gift. As if her surgical skill was a gift, and not a curse that had cost her everything that mattered. "My decision is final," she said. "I'm done." She cleaned out her office, packed up 20 years of awards and commendations and photos of successful surgeries. She looked at the count she'd kept meticulously. 2,311 successful pediatric cardiac surgeries. 2,311 children saved. 2,311 families kept whole, -1. Sarah took the number down from her wall and threw it away. She didn't want to count anymore, didn't want to measure her worth by how many lives she'd saved when she knew the one that really counted had slipped through her fingers. On her last day, she walked through the pediatric cardiac wing one final time. Saw the waiting room where families sat anxiously, hoping their surgeon would work a miracle. Saw the operating rooms where she'd spent more hours than she'd spent with her own family. Saw the recovery rooms where grateful parents hugged their saved children. And she felt nothing. No nostalgia, no pride, no sense of accomplishment. Just a hollow emptiness where her identity used to be. She left the hospital and didn't look back. For the first time in 20 years, Sarah had nowhere to be. No surgeries scheduled, no patients waiting, no emergencies to respond to. Just empty days stretching ahead of her, vast and terrifying. She didn't know what to do with herself. She tried therapy, sat in a comfortable chair across from a compassionate psychologist, and tried to explain the inexplicable. "I saved a child and my daughter died and I don't know how to live with that." The therapist said all the right things. "You made an impossible choice. Both children deserve to live. You can't blame yourself for circumstances beyond your control." But it wasn't beyond her control. That was the problem. She'd had control. She'd had a choice. And she'd chosen wrong. After 3 sessions, Sarah stopped going. The therapist meant well, but she couldn't absolve Sarah of the guilt that Sarah knew she deserved to carry. She tried support groups, sat in circles with other grieving parents, listening to their stories of loss. But their children had died of disease, of accidents, of things truly beyond anyone's control. Sarah's daughter had died while Sarah was 3 floors away, choosing to save someone else's child instead of being there for her own. She couldn't relate, couldn't share, couldn't explain without seeing judgment in their eyes, deserved judgment. So she stopped going to those too. She tried staying busy, volunteered at animal shelters, remembering that Emma had wanted to be a veterinarian, took art classes, trying to connect with the daughter she'd barely known, learned to play violin, attempting to understand the instrument Emma had loved. But everything just reminded her of what she'd lost. Every rescued animal was a life Emma would have saved. Every drawing was worse than Emma's natural talent. Every note she played on violin was a shadow of the music Emma had made. 4 months after leaving the hospital, Sarah received an unexpected visitor. Marcus's mother showed up at her house, having somehow tracked down her address. "Dr. Chen, I've been trying to reach you at the hospital, but they said you'd resigned. I couldn't believe it. Why would you leave? You're so talented, you saved so many—" She stopped, seeing Sarah's expression. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have come unannounced. I just wanted to thank you in person, and to invite you to something." "I don't need thanks," Sarah said tightly. "I was doing my job." "It's more than that," Marcus's mother insisted. "You saved my son's life. You gave us our family back, and I wanted you to see him thriving. We're having a birthday party for Marcus next month. He'll be 8. We almost lost him before he turned 7, and now he's about to turn 8, and it's all because of you. Please come. Let us show you how grateful we are." Sarah felt something snap inside her. "Your son is alive because mine is dead," she said, her voice harsh. "Marcus lived because I chose to save him instead of being there when my daughter died. So no, I will not come to his birthday party. I will not celebrate the choice I made. I will not pretend that saving Marcus was worth losing Emma." Marcus's mother looked shocked. I didn't know. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize—" "How could you?" Sarah asked bitterly. "You were so focused on being grateful for your miracle that you never asked what it cost. Marcus lived. Emma died. That's the trade. That's the choice I made, and I have to live with it for the rest of my life. Dr. Chen, I'm so sorry for your loss, but you can't blame yourself for—" "Yes, I can," Sarah interrupted. "And I do. Because I had a choice. I could have walked away from that surgery. I could have been there for my daughter. But I chose to be Dr. Sarah Chen, hero surgeon, instead of being Emma's mom. And that choice killed her just as surely as her heart failure did. Marcus's mother was crying now. I don't know what to say. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to... Just go, Sarah said, exhausted. Take your gratitude and your healthy son and your intact family and go, and don't come back. I don't want to see Marcus. I don't want to be thanked. I just want to be left alone with my grief and my guilt. The woman left, apologizing profusely. Sarah closed the door and sank to the floor, shaking. She knew she'd been cruel. Knew Marcus's mother didn't deserve that anger. But Sarah didn't know how to be gracious about the child who lived because hers had died. That night, Sarah dreamed of Emma for the first time since her death. In the dream, they were in a garden, and Emma was healthy, smiling, playing violin. Sarah tried to reach her, but every time she got close, Emma would disappear and reappear further away. I'm sorry, Sarah called out. Emma, I'm so sorry. Please let me explain. Emma stopped playing and looked at her mother with those wise, sad eyes. It's okay, Mom, she said. I understand. You had to save him. No, Sarah said, tears streaming. I should have chosen you. I should have been there. I should have. You were who you were, Emma said simply. And I loved you anyway. I just wish you'd loved me enough to be there at the end. Sarah woke up sobbing, those words echoing in her mind. I just wish you'd loved me enough. Because that was the terrible truth, wasn't it? Sarah had loved Emma, but not enough. Not enough to choose her over a patient. Not enough to walk away from a surgery. Not enough to be there when it mattered most. She had loved her daughter, but she had loved being a surgeon more. And Emma had died knowing that. That realization, that brutal, honest, devastating realization, was what finally broke Sarah completely. Not the funeral, not the divorce, not the resignation, but the understanding that her daughter had died knowing she was second choice. That Emma's last thought was probably wondering why her mother had chosen someone else. That Emma had left this world feeling less important than a stranger. Sarah spent the next week in bed, unable to move, unable to function, unable to do anything but face the truth she'd been avoiding. She had failed Emma in the most fundamental way. And no amount of surgeries, no number of lives saved, no professional success could ever make up for that failure. She was the doctor who had saved everyone but her own daughter, and she would never, ever forgive herself for that. 1 year after Emma's death, Sarah found herself standing in front of a small community clinic in a low-income neighborhood. She hadn't planned to come here, hadn't planned to do anything medical ever again. But something had drawn her to this place, to this weathered building with its faded sign. Riverside Community Health Center, free care for all. She went inside. The waiting room was packed. Families with sick children, elderly people with chronic conditions, people who looked like they'd been waiting for hours. A harried receptionist looked up. Do you have an appointment? No, Sarah said. I was wondering if you need volunteers. I'm a doctor. Was a doctor. Pediatric cardiac surgeon. The receptionist's eyes widened. Hold on. She disappeared into the back and returned with a tired-looking woman in her 50s wearing a white coat. This is Dr. Patricia Rodriguez, our director. Dr. Rodriguez looked Sarah up and down. You're Dr. Sarah Chen. I've read about you. You're the surgeon who saved that boy after the car accident. The one who worked 12 hours straight. You were all over the medical journals. That was a long time ago, Sarah said quietly. Why would someone with your credentials want to volunteer at a free clinic? Dr. Rodriguez asked, not unkindly but with clear curiosity. Sarah thought about lying, about giving some noble reason about giving back to the community. But she was so tired of lying. Because I need to be someone different than who I was. And I thought maybe helping people here, where there's no glory or recognition or awards, might be a start. Dr. Rodriguez studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded. We can always use skilled doctors. But I should warn you, this isn't like a hospital. We don't have state-of-the-art equipment. We can't do complex surgeries. Mostly we're doing basic care, chronic disease management, preventive medicine. It's not glamorous work. Good, Sarah said. I don't want glamorous. I just want useful. She started the next week. 3 days a week, she came to the clinic and saw patients. Children with asthma and ear infections, adults with diabetes and hypertension, elderly people who just needed someone to listen to their complaints about aching joints, basic medicine, routine care. Nothing that would make headlines or earn awards, and it was exactly what Sarah needed. For the first time in her career, she wasn't Dr. Sarah Chen, miracle worker. She was just a doctor helping people who needed help. She learned patients' names, their families, their struggles. She spent time listening instead of rushing to the next surgery. She was present. It didn't heal her. Nothing could heal the wound of losing Emma. But it gave her a purpose that wasn't about ego or reputation. It gave her a way to use her skills that didn't make her think about the choice she'd made, most of the time. 3 months into volunteering, Sarah was examining a 10-year-old girl named Maria, who had come in with complaints of fatigue and shortness of breath. As Sarah listened to her heart, she heard it immediately, a murmur, significant and concerning. "How long has she been tired?" Sarah asked Maria's mother in Spanish, which she'd learned years ago but rarely used in her elite hospital practice. "A few months," the mother said. "But we don't have insurance. We can't afford specialists." Sarah's hands shook as she completed the examination. She knew this presentation, knew what the murmur suggested. Maria likely had a congenital heart defect, the same condition Emma had been born with, and if left untreated, it would kill her. "She needs to see a pediatric cardiologist," Sarah said. "Today, if possible." "We can't afford—" "I'll make arrangements," Sarah interrupted. "I know people. I'll get her seen. But she needs evaluation and probably surgery, soon." Maria's mother's eyes filled with tears. "We can't pay for surgery. We have nothing." "We'll figure it out," Sarah said, though she had no idea how. "Just trust me. Your daughter needs help, and I'm going to make sure she gets it." She spent the rest of the day making calls, her former colleagues at the hospital, charitable foundations, anyone who might help an uninsured child get the cardiac care she needed. By the end of the day, she had secured a consult with Dr. Patel, the same surgeon who had operated on Emma, and a commitment from a foundation to cover the surgery costs if Maria needed operation. That night, Sarah sat in her empty house and cried, because Maria reminded her so much of Emma. Same age, same heart condition, same sweet smile and brave face. But Maria's mother was there, was present, was fighting for her daughter. Maria's mother would be there for the surgery, holding her daughter's hand, choosing her child over everything else. The way Sarah should have done. 2 weeks later, Maria had her surgery. Dr. Patel performed it flawlessly. And Sarah was in the waiting room with Maria's family, not as a surgeon, but as the doctor who had referred Maria, the person who had helped make the surgery possible. She held Maria's mother's hand as they waited, offering comfort the way someone had probably tried to comfort David while Emma was dying and Sarah was nowhere to be found. When Dr. Patel emerged to say the surgery was successful, Maria's mother hugged Sarah and sobbed with relief. Thank you for saving my daughter. You're an angel, you're a miracle." Sarah accepted the hug but couldn't accept the words. She hadn't saved Maria. Dr. Patel had. Sarah had just made a referral, had just done the basic job of a doctor, recognizing a problem and connecting a patient to the care they needed. It wasn't heroic, it was just decent. But Maria's mother looked at her with such gratitude, such reverence, and Sarah realized this was what families of her patients had always looked like, this desperate gratitude, this worship of the surgeon who had saved their child. She had seen this expression thousands of times in her career and had accepted it as her due, the natural response to her skill and dedication. But now she understood the weight of it, the burden of being someone's hero, the responsibility that came with holding a child's life in your hands. She had been so focused on her success rate, on her reputation, on being the best, that she had never really thought about what it meant to these families. Their children weren't numbers, weren't statistics. They were everything, their whole world, the way Emma had been Sarah's whole world, even if she hadn't acted like it. "I'm glad Maria's okay," Sarah said, gently extricating herself from the hug. Dr. Patel is excellent. She's in good hands. But you're the one who found it, Maria's mother insisted. Another doctor might have missed it. You saved her life by catching it. Had she? Or had she just done her job? Sarah didn't know anymore. Didn't know how to measure success or failure when every saved life reminded her of the one she'd lost. She visited Maria during her recovery. The girl was doing well, already talking about going back to school, playing with her siblings, living the life that Emma would never have. And Sarah was happy for her, genuinely happy. But the happiness was tinged with grief, because Maria got to live and Emma didn't. And there was no logic to it, no justice, just the randomness of life and death and the choices people made. "Are you okay?" Maria asked during one visit, with that perceptive way children have of seeing what adults try to hide. "You look sad." "I'm fine," Sarah said automatically. Then, because Maria reminded her so much of Emma and Emma had deserved honesty, "Actually, I'm not fine. I lost my daughter. She had a heart condition like yours. She had surgery, but she didn't make it. And I wasn't there when she died. I was saving another child instead. And I don't know how to forgive myself for that." Maria looked at her with wide, solemn eyes. Then she reached out and took Sarah's hand. "I'm sorry about your daughter, but I'm glad you saved that other child. Because maybe my mom feels the same way. Glad I lived, even if it meant you couldn't be with your daughter. Does that make me bad? That I'm glad I'm alive, even though it cost you?" Sarah felt tears streaming down her face. "No, sweetheart. It doesn't make you bad. You deserve to live. All children deserve to live. I wish I could have saved both, my patient and my daughter. I wish I'd been the kind of person who could do both." "Maybe you can't save everyone," Maria said with a child's simple wisdom. "Maybe you just have to save who you can and be sad about who you can't. And maybe that's okay." Out of the mouths of babes, Sarah thought. Maybe it was okay to have limits, to be human, to fail sometimes. But was it okay to have failed Emma? To have chosen wrong when it mattered most? She didn't know. She still didn't know. Over the following months, Sarah continued working at the clinic. She saw hundreds of patients, referred dozens for specialist care, saved lives in the quiet way that didn't make headlines, and slowly, imperceptibly, she began to change. She learned to be present, to really listen when patients talked, to remember that medicine wasn't just about fixing bodies, but about caring for whole people. She learned their stories, their struggles, their triumphs. She celebrated with them when things went well and mourned with them when they didn't. She became friends with Dr. Rodriguez, who had her own story of loss. "I lost my son to gang violence 10 years ago," Patricia told her one evening after the clinic closed. "He was 17, brilliant, full of potential, and then one stupid moment, wrong place, wrong time, and he was gone." "I'm so sorry," Sarah said. "I blamed myself for years," Patricia continued. "I was working so much, trying to serve this community, and I missed the signs that he was hanging with the wrong crowd. I thought I was doing important work, but I was neglecting my own child." Sound familiar? Sarah nodded, unable to speak. "I'm not going to tell you it gets easier," Patricia said, "or that you'll ever stop feeling guilty. But Sarah, I will tell you this. You get to choose what you do with that guilt. You can let it destroy you, or you can let it transform you. You can spend your life punishing yourself, or you can spend it honoring your daughter by being better. By being the kind of doctor, the kind of person she deserved to have as a mother." "How do I do that?" Sarah asked. "How do I honor Emma when she died because of my choices?" "By making different choices now," Patricia said simply. "By being present, by putting people first, by remembering that every patient is someone's child, someone's everything. By doing the work not for glory but for service. By being the person Emma believed you were, even when you weren't." Sarah thought about that a lot in the weeks that followed. Emma had believed in her, had been proud of her, had loved her despite everything. And maybe the way to honor that love was to become the person Emma had seen in her, the hero her daughter had drawn in those pictures, the mother she had deserved but never got. It wouldn't bring Emma back. Nothing would. But it might give Emma's death meaning. might make the pain purposeful, might transform Sarah's guilt into something useful rather than just destructive. 18 months after Emma's death, Sarah received a letter. It was from David, the first communication they'd had in months. "Sarah, I'm writing because I think you should know. I'm getting remarried. Her name is Jennifer. She's a teacher. She's kind and patient, and everything I needed after losing Emma. We're not trying to replace what we had. Nothing could replace Emma. But we're building something new. I'm telling you this not to hurt you, but because I want you to know that moving forward is possible, that life continues even after devastating loss, that you can honor the dead by living fully rather than by drowning in guilt forever. I'll never forget Emma. I think about her every day, but I'm choosing to live, to love again, to believe that I deserve happiness even though I couldn't save our daughter. I hope you can find that too. Not forgiveness. I don't know if either of us can forgive ourselves, but peace. The ability to exist in a world without Emma, without being consumed by the what-ifs and should-haves. You made a terrible choice. I'll probably never understand it. But Sarah, you can't change it. You can only decide what comes next. Who you become after the worst thing that can happen has already happened. I hope you become someone Emma would be proud of. David." Sarah read the letter 3 times, crying through each reading. David was moving on, building a new life, finding happiness after tragedy. And she was, what? Still stuck. Still drowning. Still unable to move past the moment when she'd chosen Marcus over Emma. But maybe David was right. Maybe it was time to choose what came next. That evening, Sarah pulled out the box of Emma's things she'd been unable to look at for 18 months. Her drawings, her journals, her violin. The detritus of a life cut short, and she looked through them, really looked, for the first time since Emma's death. Emma's journal was filled with entries about her life, her dreams, her thoughts about her mother. Sarah read them with tears streaming down her face. Mom saved 3 kids today. She looked so tired when she came home, but so happy. I'm proud of her even though I wish she had time for me too. I played my solo perfectly at rehearsal. I wish Mom could have heard it. But she was in surgery. She's always in surgery, that's okay. Saving lives is more important than school concerts. Sometimes I wonder if Mom would love me more if I was sick, if I needed her to save me. But I don't want to be sick just to get her attention. That's silly. And then, the last entry, written the day before Emma's surgery. I'm scared about the surgery tomorrow, but I'm also excited because Mom promised to be there. She said she'd be in the OR watching to make sure everything goes okay. I know she's busy and important, but just this once, she's choosing me. Just this once, I'm enough. I love her so much. I hope she knows that. Sarah sobbed as she read those words. Emma had been excited that her mother would be there, had seen it as proof of love. And then Sarah had chosen Marcus instead, had broken that promise, had let Emma die thinking she wasn't enough to make her mother stay. It was unbearable, unforgivable, devastating. But it was also over. Emma was gone, and Sarah had to decide, would she spend the rest of her life drowning in this guilt? Or would she find a way to live with it? To carry it but not be crushed by it? To let Emma's death transform her rather than destroy her? She thought about what David had said, what Patricia had said, what even Maria, a 10-year-old child, had said. Maybe you can't save everyone. Maybe you just save who you can. Maybe that's okay. It wasn't okay that Emma had died. Would never be okay. But maybe it could be okay that Sarah kept living, kept trying, kept serving. Not to earn redemption, that was impossible, but to honor the daughter who had loved her despite everything. Sarah made a decision that night. She would stay at the clinic, would continue the work, would be the doctor Emma had believed she was, not the celebrity surgeon chasing glory, but the healer serving people who needed help. She would be present, would remember names, would see patients as people, not cases, would honor Emma by being the kind of mother to everyone's children that she had failed to be to her own. It wouldn't fix what she'd broken, wouldn't bring Emma back, wouldn't earn forgiveness from David or herself, but it would mean something, would give Emma's death purpose, would transform Sarah's guilt into service. She would be the doctor who had saved everyone but her own daughter. That would always be true. But maybe she could also become the doctor who learned from that failure, who became better because of it, who honored Emma's memory by being present, by choosing people over prestige, by remembering that every patient was someone's everything. It was a start, not redemption, not healing, but a start. And for now, that would have to be enough. 5 years after Emma's death, Sarah stood in the Riverside Community Health Center's small auditorium, watching a group of teenagers receive certificates for completing a health education program. Among them was Maria, now 15, healthy and vibrant, talking excitedly about her plans to become a nurse. "I want to help people like Dr. Chen helped me," Maria said during her speech. "She saved my life when I was 10, and now I want to save others." Sarah smiled from the back of the room, but the smile was bittersweet. Maria thought Sarah had saved her life, but Sarah knew the truth. Dr. Patel had done the surgery. Sarah had just made a referral, done the basic work of recognizing a problem and connecting a patient to care. Nothing heroic, just decent medicine. But to Maria, it was everything. And Sarah had learned to accept that, to accept gratitude without feeling like a fraud, to understand that sometimes the small acts matter as much as the grand gestures, that being there and being present was its own kind of heroism. After the ceremony, Maria approached her. "Dr. Chen, did you hear? I got accepted into the nursing program at City College. I start in the fall." "That's wonderful, Maria. I'm so proud of you. I couldn't have done it without you. You gave me a future." Maria paused, then said carefully, "How are you doing? I know this time of year is hard." It was April. Emma had died in April 5 years ago. Every year this month was torture. The memories, the what-ifs, the crushing weight of a choice Sarah could never unmake. "I'm managing," Sarah said, which was true. She had learned to manage, to carry the grief without being destroyed by it, to live with the guilt without drowning in it. It wasn't healing, she would never heal from losing Emma, but it was survival. And survival was something. That evening, Sarah drove to the cemetery. She came every week, sometimes more, bringing flowers and talking to a daughter who couldn't hear her, but whose presence Sarah still felt everywhere. "Hey baby," Sarah said, sitting on the grass beside Emma's headstone. "Maria graduated from the health program today. She's going to be a nurse. She's doing so well, Emma. She's alive and healthy and full of dreams, and I know I'm supposed to feel good about that, but sometimes it just reminds me that you're not alive, that you didn't get to graduate or go to college or have dreams." The wind rustled through the trees. A bird sang nearby. The world continued, indifferent to Sarah's grief. "I saw your dad last month," Sarah continued. "He and Jennifer are expecting a baby, a girl. They're naming her Grace. I'm happy for him, I really am. He deserves joy after everything. But Emma, it hurts so much to see him moving forward, building a new family when I'm still stuck here, still carrying this guilt." She paused, wiping tears from her face. "Dr. Rodriguez says I need to forgive myself, that I've punished myself enough, that you wouldn't want me to spend my whole life drowning in regret. But how do I forgive myself, Emma? How do I accept that I chose wrong, that I prioritized a stranger over you, that you died calling for me and I wasn't there?" There was no answer. There never was. Just silence and memories and the terrible knowledge that nothing she did could change the past. "I'm trying to be better," Sarah said. "I'm trying to be the kind of doctor you deserved as a mother. Present, caring, seeing people as people, not just cases. I work at the clinic now instead of chasing glory at hospitals. I remember patients' names. I listen to their stories. I choose connection over prestige. I'm trying to honor you by being who you believed I was, even when I wasn't." She pulled out Emma's journal, which she carried with her everywhere now, and read from it. "Mom saved 3 kids today. I'm proud of her even though I wish she had time for me too. You were so generous, baby. So understanding. You deserved better than me. You deserved a mother who chose you first. And I'm sorry. I will be sorry every day for the rest of my life. But I'm trying to make your death mean something. Trying to let it transform me instead of just destroying me. I hope that's okay. I hope wherever you are, you can see that I'm trying." Sarah sat with Emma until the sun began to set, as she did every week, finding a strange peace in this ritual of grief. It didn't fix anything, didn't change anything, but it kept Emma present in her life, kept the memory alive, kept Sarah connected to the daughter she had lost. As she was leaving, she saw someone else approaching with flowers. Marcus. He was 12 now, tall and healthy, with his mother beside him. They saw Sarah and froze. For years, Sarah had avoided Marcus and his family, couldn't bear to see the child who lived because Emma died. But time and therapy and exhaustion had worn down her anger. Now she just felt tired. "Doctor, Chen," Marcus's mother said carefully. "We don't want to disturb you. We can come back." "It's okay," Sarah said. "Who are you visiting?" Marcus held up the flowers. "My grandpa. He died last year. We come every week." "I'm sorry for your loss," Sarah said, and meant it. "We're sorry for yours too," Marcus's mother said. "I think about your daughter often, about what her loss cost you, about what my son's life cost you." "It wasn't Marcus's fault," Sarah said, and realized as she said it that she believed it. "He was a child who needed help. Any surgeon would have tried to save him. I made a choice, and it was the wrong choice, but that's on me. Not on Marcus. He deserves to live. All children deserve to live. But your daughter deserved to live too," Sarah finished. "And she didn't, and I'll carry that for the rest of my life. But Marcus, that's not your burden. You were 7 years old and dying. You didn't ask me to choose you over Emma. I did that, and I have to live with it." Marcus, who had been silent, spoke up. "I remember you. From the hospital. You operated on me for so long. My mom said you wouldn't give up on me even when it seemed hopeless." "That's what surgeons do," Sarah said. "We don't give up." "I'm sorry your daughter died," Marcus said simply. "I'm sorry I lived and she didn't. It doesn't seem fair." "It's not fair," Sarah agreed. "But Marcus, I don't want you to feel guilty for being alive. You didn't do anything wrong. You were just a child who got hurt and needed help. What happened to Emma isn't your fault. It's mine. I made a choice, and I chose wrong. But you living, that's not wrong. You deserve your life. You deserve your future. And I'm glad you're healthy. I am. Even though it hurts." Marcus nodded slowly, processing this. Then he did something unexpected. He hugged Sarah. Just wrapped his arms around her and held on, this 12-year-old boy who owed his life to her choice, offering comfort to the woman who had paid the price for that choice. Sarah stood frozen for a moment, then hugged him back, crying quietly. Because in some twisted way, Marcus was connected to Emma. He lived because she died. His heartbeat was the echo of her silence. And hating him wouldn't bring Emma back. Hating herself wouldn't change anything. All she could do was carry the weight and try to live with it. When they separated, Marcus's mother was crying too. "Thank you," she said, "for saving him. And I'm so sorry it cost you what it did." "I know," Sarah said. "Thank you." They stood there for a moment, 3 people bound by tragedy and choice and the randomness of life and death. Then Marcus and his mother went to visit their grandfather's grave, and Sarah returned to Emma's, and they mourned separately, but somehow connected. That night, Sarah sat in her small apartment. She'd sold the big house, couldn't bear to live in the space where Emma had grown up, and wrote in the journal she'd been keeping since Emma's death. A journal of letters to her daughter, things she wished she could say, words that would never be read but needed to be written. "Dear Emma, 5 years. It's been 5 years since I lost you. 5 years of carrying this guilt, this grief, this knowledge that I failed you in the most fundamental way. 5 years of trying to figure out how to live in a world without you. I saw Marcus today at the cemetery. He's 12 now, healthy and tall. His existence is a testament to my choice, the choice to save him instead of being there for you. And I wanted to hate him. For years I did hate him, or at least resented him. But today, I looked at him and I saw just a kid, just a child who was hurt and needed help. And I realized he didn't do anything wrong. I did. I made the choice. I bear the responsibility. I don't know if I'll ever forgive myself for that choice. I don't know if I should forgive myself, but I'm trying to live with it, to carry it without being crushed by it, to let your death transform me instead of just destroying me. I'm not the surgeon I used to be. I'm not Dr. Sarah Chen, miracle worker, celebrity surgeon, the woman who saved thousands. That person died with you. Now I'm just a doctor at a community clinic, seeing patients who can't afford fancy hospitals, doing basic medicine that doesn't make headlines. And Emma, I think this is who I should have been all along. Present, caring, seeing people, not cases, choosing connection over prestige, being there, not just achieving things. I wish I'd learned this while you were alive. I wish I'd been this person for you, but I wasn't. And I can't change that. All I can do is try to honor your memory by being better now, by being the kind of person you deserve to have as a mother. I miss you every day, every single day. I see you in every 10-year-old patient I treat. I hear you in every violin that plays. I think of you every time I make a choice between work and presence, and now I choose presence. Always. Because I learned too late that being there matters more than being brilliant. You taught me that, Emma. Through your death, you taught me what really matters. I just wish I'd learned it while you were alive to see it. I love you. I will always love you. And I will always be sorry. Mom. Sarah closed the journal and looked at the photo of Emma on her desk. Emma at 9, smiling and holding her violin, full of life and promise. The daughter she had lost, the child she had failed, the girl who had loved her despite everything. She would carry this grief forever, would carry the guilt forever, would wake up every day knowing she had made a choice that cost her daughter's life. But she would also keep working, keep serving, keep trying to be better. Not for redemption, that was impossible, but for purpose, to give Emma's death meaning, to transform tragedy into transformation. 10 years after Emma's death, Sarah was invited to speak at a medical conference. Not about surgical technique or innovative procedures, but about physician burnout, work-life balance, and the hidden costs of medical heroism. She almost declined. She didn't like public speaking, didn't like being in the spotlight, but Patricia convinced her. "Your story matters," Patricia said. "Other doctors need to hear it. They need to know that success isn't measured in surgeries or lives saved. That being present matters. That choosing family over career isn't weakness. That the choices we make have consequences beyond our patience." So Sarah stood on a stage in front of hundreds of physicians and told her story. Not the sanitized version where she was the hero, but the truth. The whole devastating truth. "My name is Dr. Sarah Chen," she began. 10 years ago, I was one of the top pediatric cardiac surgeons in the country. I had saved over 2,300 children. I had awards and accolades and a reputation for never giving up on a patient. I was excellent at my job. And I was a terrible mother. She told them about Emma, about the marriage she'd neglected, about the daughter who had learned to be invisible, about the choice she'd made on that terrible day 10 years ago to operate on Marcus instead of being there for Emma's surgery, about how Emma had died calling for her mother who was 3 floors away, saving someone else's child. "I made a choice," Sarah said, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. "And it was the wrong choice. People tell me it was an impossible choice, that any surgeon would have done the same, that I was just following my training. But the truth is simpler and more devastating. I chose my ego over my daughter. I chose being Dr. Sarah Chen, hero surgeon, over being Emma's mom. And she died because of that choice." The auditorium was completely silent. Sarah could see doctors in the audience crying, could see recognition on their faces. How many of them had made similar choices? How many had missed their children's milestones for their careers? How many were excellent physicians and absent parents? "I'm not telling you this story to make you feel guilty," Sarah continued, "or to suggest that medical careers are incompatible with family life. But I am telling you this. Your patients will survive if you take time off. The hospital will find another surgeon. The work will continue without you. But your children? They're only young once. They only have one childhood. And if you miss it, if you choose work over presence again and again and again, you can't get that back. Ever." She paused, looking out at the sea of faces. I saved 2,111 children in my surgical career. I was brilliant at my job. I was dedicated and skilled and relentless, but I failed the one child who was mine. And no amount of successful surgeries will ever make up for that failure. No award or recognition or professional achievement will ever fill the hole left by my daughter's absence. I'm not saying don't be excellent at your jobs. Be excellent. Save lives. Make a difference. But I am saying, remember that your children are patients too, that they need you, that they deserve presence and attention and choice, that being there matters more than being the best. 10 years ago, I learned the hardest lesson of my life. You can't get time back. You can't redo choices. You can't save someone who's already gone. All you can do is learn from your failures and try to be better. And I desperately hope, that by sharing my failure, I can help some of you make different choices, better choices, choices you can live with. She finished her speech to a standing ovation, but she felt no satisfaction in it. Just the hope that maybe, her story would help someone else avoid her mistakes. That Emma's death would have meaning beyond Sarah's grief. Afterward, dozens of doctors approached her. Thank you for sharing that. I needed to hear this. I've been missing my son's games for surgeries. I'm going to change that. Your courage in telling this story is incredible. But one doctor, a young woman in her 30s, said something that stuck with Sarah. Dr. Chen, I'm sorry for your loss. And I hear what you're saying about work-life balance. But what if the choice really is impossible? What if both patients need you? What should you have done? Let Marcus die to be with Emma. Let a 7-year-old die so you could hold your daughter's hand. Was that really the better choice? Sarah had thought about this question for 10 years, had tortured herself with it, had analyzed it from every angle, and she still didn't have a good answer. I don't know, she admitted. Honestly, I don't know. Maybe there was no right choice. Maybe both options were terrible. But I do know this. I should never have been in a position where I had to choose. I should have taken time off. Should have been there for Emma's surgery from the start. Not as an observer, but as her mother. Should have prioritized her enough that when Marcus came in, I could have said, I can't operate today. My daughter needs me. Find another surgeon. The impossible choice was the culmination of thousands of smaller choices where I chose wrong. And that's what I want other doctors to learn from. Don't wait until you're facing an impossible choice. Make the right smaller choices along the way. The young doctor nodded thoughtfully. Thank you. That helps. But Sarah wasn't sure it did help. Wasn't sure anything helped. She had shared her story, had warned others, had tried to transform her tragedy into a teaching moment. But Emma was still gone, and no amount of helping others would bring her back. 15 years after Emma's death, Sarah received an unexpected letter. It was from Sophie, Emma's childhood best friend, now 25 years old. Dear Dr. Chen, you probably don't remember me, but I was Emma's best friend. I spoke at her funeral. I've thought about her every day since then, and I wanted you to know something. Emma loved you so much. She was so proud of you. She used to show me articles about your surgeries, about the children you saved, and her face would just light up. That's my mom, she'd say. She's a hero. I know you've struggled with guilt about not being there when Emma died. Emma told me once that she was scared about her surgery, but she wasn't scared of dying. She said, if I die, at least my mom will have saved so many other kids. At least my mom makes a difference. She was proud of you, Dr. Chen, even at the end. Especially at the end. I'm writing because I just had a daughter of my own, and I named her Emma, and I want her to know about the original Emma, the kind, talented, generous girl who understood too much and forgave too easily, who loved her mother even when her mother was absent, who died too young but lived fully in the time she had. I don't know if this helps or hurts, but I wanted you to know. Emma never blamed you. She loved you until her last breath, and she would want you to be happy, Doctor. Chen, she would want you to forgive yourself. She would want you to live with love and remembrance, Sophie. Sarah read the letter 3 times, crying harder each time. Emma had been proud of her, had loved her, had never blamed her. That should have been comforting. But somehow it made the guilt worse. Because Emma had deserved better than acceptance of neglect, had deserved a mother who chose her without Emma having to be understanding about it. But there was also something liberating in Sophie's words. She would want you to forgive yourself. She would want you to live. Would Emma want her to live? Or would she want Sarah to carry this guilt forever as penance? Sarah thought about the girl Emma had been, kind, generous, forgiving, and she realized Emma would want her to live, would want her mother to find peace, would want the tragedy of her death to lead to something other than Sarah's eternal suffering. That didn't mean Sarah could forgive herself, but maybe it meant she could try, could work towards something like acceptance, could honor Emma by living fully rather than by drowning in guilt forever. 20 years after Emma's death, Sarah sat in her small office at the Riverside Community Health Center, now 62 years old, still working 3 days a week, still serving the community. On her desk was a photo of Emma, the same photo she'd kept for 20 years, and next to it, a photo of Sophie's daughter, little Emma, now 5 years old, and full of the same light as the original Emma. Sarah had become part of Sophie's life, an honorary grandmother to the child named after her daughter. It didn't replace Emma. Nothing could replace Emma, but it connected Sarah to her daughter's memory in a way that was healing rather than just painful. She looked at the photos and thought about the past 20 years, the grief that had consumed her, the guilt that still lived in her chest, the choice she could never unmake, the daughter she could never save. But she also thought about the hundreds of patients she'd helped at the clinic, the Marias she'd referred for specialized care, the families she'd supported, the medical students she'd mentored, teaching them about presence and balance and the importance of remembering that every patient is someone's everything. She thought about the speech she'd given 10 years ago and the emails she still received from doctors who said it had changed their practice, made them reconsider their priorities, helped them make better choices. Emma's death had meaning. Not because it needed to have meaning to justify the loss, nothing could justify losing a child, but because Sarah had worked to give it meaning, had transformed her tragedy into service and teaching and hopefully preventing other parents from making her mistakes. It wasn't redemption. She would never be redeemed. But it was purpose, and purpose was enough to keep living for. That evening, Sarah drove to the cemetery one last time. She came less frequently now, once a month instead of once a week, not because Emma mattered less, but because carrying the grief had become part of her, woven into who she was rather than something she had to actively engage with. "Hey, baby," she said, sitting on the grass that had become as familiar as home. "I'm getting old. 62 now? Can you believe it? You'd be 30 if you were here. Probably a veterinarian like you dreamed. Probably married with kids of your own. Probably teaching me to be a better grandmother than I was a mother." She smiled through tears. "Sophie named her daughter after you. Little Emma. She's 5 now, and she's so much like you. Kind and creative and full of life. I see you in her, and it hurts. But it's also beautiful. Like you're still here somehow, even though you're gone." The wind rustled through the trees, familiar and comforting. "I've been thinking about forgiveness lately. About whether I can ever forgive myself for the choice I made. And I don't know if I can. But Emma, I think I'm ready to try. Not because I deserve forgiveness, but because carrying this guilt forever doesn't honor you. You were too kind, too generous, too loving to want your mother to suffer forever. You would want me to live, really live, not just survive, but thrive. And I'm trying, I really am." She paused, touching the headstone gently. "I saved 2,311 children in my surgical career. But I lost you. And for 20 years, I've defined myself by that failure. But maybe I can also define myself by what I've done since. By the different kind of doctor I became. By the lives I've touched at the clinic. By the students I've mentored. By the meaning I've tried to create from your loss. It doesn't balance out. Nothing balances out losing you. But it's something. It's a legacy. And maybe that's enough." Sarah sat with Emma until the sun set, as she had done hundreds of times over the past 20 years. But this time felt different. Not like an ending, but like a transition. Like maybe finally she could carry Emma's memory without being crushed by it. Could honor her daughter by living well rather than by suffering endlessly. She stood up, kissed her fingers, and pressed them to Emma's name on the headstone. I love you, baby. I will always love you. And I will always be sorry. But I'm going to try to live now. Really live. The way you would have wanted. The way you deserve to see me live. As Sarah walked back to her car, she thought about the doctor she'd been and the doctor she'd become. Dr. Sarah Chen, miracle worker, who had saved thousands but lost everything. And Dr. Sarah Chen, community physician, who had learned too late what really mattered but was trying to live that lesson every day. She was the doctor who had saved everyone but her own daughter. That would always be true. That would always hurt. But she was also the doctor who had learned from that failure, who had changed because of it, who had spent 20 years trying to honor Emma by being better, by being present, by remembering that every patient was someone's child, someone's everything. It wasn't redemption, but it was growth. It was meaning. It was the best she could do with the life she had left. And maybe, just maybe, wherever Emma was, that was enough. Sarah drove home through the darkening streets, carrying her grief as she always would, but also carrying hope. Hope that her failures had taught others. Hope that Emma's death had meaning. Hope that forgiveness was possible, even if it took a lifetime to achieve. She was 62 years old. She had lost her daughter, her marriage, her career, her identity. But she had also found purpose, service, meaning, and maybe even peace. She was the doctor who had saved everyone but her own daughter. And she was the woman who had learned, painfully and slowly, that being present mattered more than being perfect. That love required choice, that every moment was precious because it could never be reclaimed. These lessons had cost her everything, but they had also saved her. Not from guilt or grief or regret, those would live in her forever, but from becoming the kind of person who learned nothing, who changed nothing, who let Emma's death be meaningless suffering instead of transformative tragedy. Emma was gone. That would never change. But Sarah was still here, still working, still trying, still honoring her daughter by being better every day. It wasn't enough, would never be enough, but it was something, and something was all any of us ever had.